Welcome back to the Nutrition Made Simple podcast, powered by Healthy Steps Nutrition. At Healthy Steps Nutrition, we believe something as fundamental as nutrition shouldn't be complicated, which is why we focus on a simple, habit-based approach. We know that helping you become the best and healthiest version of yourself isn't just about what you eat or going to the gym a few hours a week. We focus on a holistic framework addressing stress management, mindset, lifestyle, sleep, support system, and of course, exercise and nutrition. My name is Nicole Coyne, and I'm one of the dietitians and the founder of Healthy Steps Nutrition, CrossFit HSN, and HSN Mentoring. I'm also the author of the Healthy Kids Cookbook, 100% kid-approved recipes the entire family will love. You can find it on Amazon. In this podcast, I'm going to teach you how to take one step at a time to making health a way of life. What a great way to restart the new year, get back on track with us releasing new podcast episodes every single week. In today's episode, I could not be more excited about releasing. It is with one of my favorite authors, Jon Acuff. He's written many books. He's a New York Times bestseller of 8 books. 8 books. Crazy. His most recent book, called Your New Playlist, is a great book for parents and teens talking about overthinking and mindset. He actually released an adult version of that book called Soundtracks, which I read back in 2022. It was a fantastic book. We recommended it to many of our clients, as well as coaches and gym owners that we work with. It truly helps you understand overthinking and how to overcome overthinking. Maybe you are thinking, I don't struggle with overthinking. I promise you, you probably do. 99.9% of us deal with overthinking. Overthinking is defined as when what you think gets in the way of what you want. Well, today's conversation is going to be so much fun. We talk about goal setting and mindset and, of course, overthinking. I really hope that you enjoy this podcast episode, and we will get to it right after this message. Well, I am so excited to be doing something brand new this year. The idea actually comes from Jon Acuff. He does these free challenges to help people kickstart their journey, super quick 5-7 day challenges. And we are going to be hosting a free 5-day challenge, giving you simple strategies to make health a way of life so that 2023 can be your best year ever. All you need to do is click the link in the show notes to register to join in this free 5-day challenge. It is going to be starting on Monday, January 9th. You don't want to miss it. It is a free way to get simple tips to help you make health a way of life with a huge group of people. It is going to be so much fun. All you need to do is click the link in the show notes. All right, let's get to this episode with Jon Acuff. Jon, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me today.
I feel like our listeners are in for a jackpot and they don't even know it yet.
Oh, good. No pressure. Well, how about a low bar? I feel like our members are in for, we'll see. And then I crush it and it's a surprise.
Oh, yeah, that would have been good too. Well, today we're going to talk about all things goal setting, how to stay motivated, mindset around goals, which I think is such a popular topic. But before we do that, I think it's important that we introduce you and how you got on the show. So you're a 7-time, is it 8 now with Your New Playlist? 7-time bestseller?
I've written, I guess it's 8 books now at this point. The 9th one comes out next fall. So I'm always like trying to add up to the next one. Okay. Yeah. 8. It's 8 right now.
Pretty awesome. So New York Times bestselling author, motivational speaker, but we actually got to meet in person. You were speaking at GLS, Global Leadership Summit. And probably the reason why we ended up going before the CrossFit Games, because that was a little bit of a chaotic week. And we got to chatting after, and you do CrossFit.
Yeah. And I have a buddy of mine, Caleb Gregory, owns a really popular CrossFit gym here in Nashville. We live probably 20 minutes outside of Nashville. So yeah, we had that in common. And I said, oh, do you know Caleb? And of course you knew Caleb. So yeah, I always tell people the world is a lot smaller than you think. Like you can't be a jerk to anybody. You're going to see that person again. Like I promise.
Yeah, Caleb is awesome. We love CrossFit East Nashville. They do some really amazing stuff there. But I wanted to ask you a personal question, then we'll dive into all things goals. So obviously you do CrossFit, at least out of your home gym when we originally talked. Why do you personally prioritize your health so much? You're so active and you really do prioritize your health, but why do you personally prioritize your health?
Well, it's the foundation for everything else. I'm not, my wife will sometimes joke and be like, "Hey, I think you should go work out," which is her way of being like, "You're kind of being a huge jerk right now. Like, go get some endorphins." So it's connected to every other part of your life. There's some things that aren't, that are great things for you to do, but they're not foundational. They're not connected to everything else. Your health is one of those things that's connected to every part of your life. And so I just know there's a short list of things that if I want to be at a high level, if I want to live at a high level, I need to have these 4 boxes checked, or these 5 boxes, depending on the season. And health is one of them. So the higher levels I go with my career, with my family, with being a dad, with being a husband, whatever, the more important my health gets. It's only more important if you want to achieve other goals. Like you could make a ton of money and then pass away earlier than you could have because you're out of shape. Like, so the money was useless. The money did nothing. And so for me, it's part of the mix, and it's an important part of the mix.
Absolutely. Another side question. Have you actually been into a CrossFit gym yet? I know you work out and do CrossFit at home. Have you ever been into a CrossFit
Other than
gym?
Caleb has his own gym too. So no, other than Caleb's, I've done it with him a couple times, but not like I've never gone down to East Nashville just because my schedule is so busy that I love the flexibility of either Caleb's gym, which is in my neighborhood, or my own gym, which is in my garage.
All right. Well, I guess it kind of counts since Caleb's a CrossFit gym owner and coach. So we'll give it to you. All right.
All right. Yeah, totally.
Let's dive into goals. So as a CrossFit athlete, many of the listeners on this podcast do CrossFit or coach CrossFit. I think we are so used to setting goals for fitness, and so many people don't set other goals in areas of their life, like spiritual, relational, financial. Like, why do you think people are really good at setting and achieving goals in some areas, but not other areas of their life?
Well, that's a great question. A lot of times it's because there's not metrics that are easy to see in other areas. So let's take relationships. Most people I meet have never set a relationship goal. They hope their relationships happen organically, like jazz, like they just kind of evolve themselves, and they'll have metrics and KPIs and targets and all these things for their fitness or their work goals, and then they just hope they have a good marriage. But hope is not a plan. That's not. And I always say nothing awesome happens accidentally. You don't accidentally get good at CrossFit. I've never met a single person that was like, I was just binge watching Netflix and I looked up and I was doing burpees. I don't even remember getting off the couch. Nothing accidentally gets better or awesome. Marriages don't. The default of marriage is to be separate and have separate lives, separate interests, and eventually get a divorce. That's the default unless you work on it. Good marriages, like good CrossFit, take effort. And so one of the problems is there's not easy metrics. So one of my goals has been, okay, I want to be a better dad, better husband. Too vague, too fuzzy. You can't do anything with that. That's useless. So then I was like, if I was kind to my wife and kids 365 times in a year, that would make me a better husband, better dad. It would force me to be creative. I would have to plan it. It would force me to track it. So all I did was I bought a behavior chart that's probably designed for 5-year-olds so they don't bite each other at kindergarten. And it's a red light, green light, big chart. And I got some stickers. And so then I just started deliberately tracking that and making it into a goal. And then it actually started to happen. And so I think a lot of times, though, we have a hard time going, here's the fuzzy kind of thing I want to do. How do I actually track that? Where if you do CrossFit, things weigh something. There's a number. There's a number of times you can go. There's a community. So you often have to figure out what's the metric of this goal so that I can see I'm actually making progress.
I love it. And for every person, that metric might be a little bit different. I know
It should be.
Yeah.
You should modify everything, every goal you have. Or the problem is self-help people like me write these books and they write them sometimes based on their personality. So they go, you got to get up at 2 a.m., which is great for that person. But for other people who that's not their best time, that's they feel like a failure right out of the gate. You don't know how many kids I have, what ages they are, where I live, what my job is. So you have to modify any bit of advice. I always say you should remix every bit of advice you get according to your own life. Because when you have a kind of broadly distributed piece of advice, whether it's Instagram or a book or a speech, it can't be personalized to you. It's your job to personalize it to you.
I love that. At the end of the day, I think one of the things I'm taking away from this, like, you need to be intentional with how you're tracking, right?
Yeah.
Like, whatever that metric is. I know my husband and I go on a date every single week, and every few weeks we go away for the weekend. And like, that is our time to get away from the business and the kids and everything else to focus on us, because at some point, hopefully the kids are gone away to college and it is just going to be us. We want to be able to still have that great relationship that we had 10 years ago. So, love that. Let's talk about goals. And, there's, again, a lot of different ways, like CrossFit. Okay, easy. We've got metrics there, relationally, financially, spiritually, all these different types of goals, health goals, nutrition goals, weight loss goals. How do you encourage people to figure out what they should focus on first? Because if we're trying to focus on all the things, we're likely going to fail, right?
Yeah. So I always say it's a good rule of thumb to have like a goal per category. And it depends on what your life can accommodate. In the same way, like I wouldn't want somebody to look at my life and go, wow, you're able to write so much in the morning. That's because I don't have kids that are 2 and 3. When I had a 2 and 3-year-old, our life had a different shape. I now have a junior in high school and a freshman in college. I have a different amount of time. I have a different shape. So I always think a good rule of thumb, like people often go like, what's the exact number of goals I should do? There's not an exact, like you might as well say 7.2 and just make up an answer, because there's not an exact. But I think a good way to think about it is, okay, one per kind of category of my life in a way that they're not competing. So a competing set of goals would be, I want to make the most money possible, and I want to spend more time with my family than ever before. Like if I'd made those 2 goals for my life, those would be competing, because, I travel for work. So if I said, okay, I'm going to be gone more than ever before because I got a financial goal and I want to be around my family, like that wouldn't make sense. So I try to find like, okay, what's a relationship goal? What's a financial goal? What's a career goal? What's a health goal? What's a fun goal? High performers have a hard time having fun. They're terrible at fun. They're terrible at celebrating things that went well because they're already on to the next thing. So like I have to make fun a goal or I won't do it. And so and you could add to that, I might want an intellectual goal. Like for me, reading's fun. So one of my fun goal is 52 books a year. Now, somebody else who doesn't like reading would go, that's torture. Cool. Like you might like puzzles, like we're all different. But so for me, you can think about them in any categories you want, but I try to have at least one that I'm working on. And then as that one gains momentum, I can then add another one. So throughout the year, January, maybe around April, I'm like, okay, what's working? What's not working? What do I want to add? Like, where can it this area of my life is going well. Like CrossFit's going well. I'm going to add like a 2-mile warm-up run before, because I'm a runner. So I still love running. Like I want to do a half marathon. So, okay, I'm going to add that, but now I know I can. Where if I started at the beginning of the year and said, I'm going to do CrossFit and run and this and this and this and this, I'd get overwhelmed right out of the gate and I wouldn't do it. And so that for me, I layer them as I've been successful. And it's like a big snowball rolling down a hill. But if I try to do it all at once, I won't actually do it.
Awesome. That kind of leads me to the next question, because I think a lot of people start, I think you probably wrote a book on this, right?
Yep.
A lot of people start things and they don't finish them. So why is that? And how can people who are super excited about doing something on day one see it to the end?
Yeah. So, I mean, people fail for a number of reasons. Sometimes it's, they picked the wrong thing. They picked a goal they thought they should do, that a friend recommended it, a parent recommended it. I always say that it's so hard to talk to college seniors who have done the major their mom wanted, not they wanted. So they'll say, I'm about to go to law school. I know I hate law school. I'm going to hate law school, but my mom said I'd be a good lawyer. What do I do? And they're 4 years down a path that they don't want to go. So sometimes it's, you've picked a goal that you didn't really care about from the get-go. Like, to fix that, you experiment. You like high performers think it's all or nothing. They have 2 speeds, like nitro and neutral. And so they're like, once I decide I have to do it forever. No. You do an experiment. Try it for 3 weeks. Take some notes. Do I like this? Do I hate this? I should retire this after 3 weeks, or I should go a different level. Like I would say this to me, instead of buying a $3,000 carbon fiber bike, borrow one from your neighbor and commit to 50 miles of riding. And then at mile 51, go, I kind of like this. Like maybe I'll invest in my own bike. I did it the reverse. I bought an expensive bike, hated cycling. It hung in my garage for weeks and just shamed me. And eventually I sold it at a loss. Like I should have done it a smarter way via experiment. That's part of the reason people fail. Sometimes the size of their goal is too big, like right out of the gate. We did a big study with nearly 900 people for 6 months on their goals. And we asked people in the middle of the goal to cut their goals in half. And the people that did were 63% more successful. Now, that doesn't mean that the plan is come up with a crazy goal, then cut it in half along the way. No, not at all. That's just an indication of how bad people are at estimating the time and the results. People have a hard time with both of those. So you'll meet people, I guarantee you meet people like this that are like, I did one CrossFit workout. I'm going to do it every day for the entire year. And you're like, that like, I'm going to the games next weekend. And you're like, you have no foundation to build on. You can't and they burn out like within a month, they burn out and they never come back. And you go, oh, if you could have done it every third day and fallen in love with it and learned how to enjoy it and gotten some momentum, you could have done it more and more and more and more if you paced it the right way. But because you went too aggressive right out of the gate, you burned out and you went to the next fad and you're a jumper, you're a gym jumper. You're not going to ever commit to something. So that's part of why people fail. So a lot of it is making sure you have the right goal. Making sure another trick is putting as many milestones as you need. You have to have a lot of milestones. I always say like no marathon only has a starting line and a finish line. They give you a sign at every single mile because they know at mile 11, you need to know, okay, it's 11. And people wear watches. Rarely do you see a serious runner who's like, I don't care about time. I don't care about my progress. I'm just going to run until hopefully I finish. So like, you've got to make sure you've got some milestones along the way of, okay, I've got, a 2-day milestone and a 6-day milestone and a 10-day. Because what I say is nobody stops running when they can see the finish line. Like you never see a racer go, I can see it. Like nobody stops writing their book when they're on the last chapter and they go, nah, it doesn't matter. I'm like 2 pages from the end, but it doesn't matter. We all naturally speed up when we can see the end. So your job is to add lots of micro ends to kind of push you along the way. And so those are some of the things people can do.
I love it. I love the idea of milestones. I think that's super, super valuable. And even like gamifying the process for yourself.
100%, 100%. Any goal. I mean, financially, like when we were trying to pay off our Forerunner, like this was when we first 5 years of marriage, maybe we had a Forerunner and we would think about owning different pieces of it. Okay. We did this payment. We now own the front left panel. We did this, cause we needed to gamify that because the finish line of we have a car payment to we finished it off too big. We needed milestones in between. So you can do that with any goal. And that's why I tell people go, I want to write a book. And I'm always like, don't write a book, write a chapter. Like write a chapter. Writing a book has a lot of pressure. Writing a chapter, you go, okay, I'm going to write a chapter. And don't just write a chapter, write 3 pages. And you go, okay, I can write 3 pages. Don't just write 3 pages, write 1 page. You're like, okay, don't just write 1 page, write 100 words. And now you've got micro goals that'll take you to the finish line versus just going, I got to write a book. That's too big.
Right. You mentioned this in one of like the VIP things that you did, carving out time every single morning. Like this is when I'm writing. Mm-hmm. I've done a lot of work with Donald Miller in the past, who's right down the street from you. And he does the same thing. Like he goes to a coffee shop. He has his time that he, writes books every single morning. I did a workshop with him on writing a book. And he said the same thing. Like you need to pick your time and be consistent with it, track it to get to where you want.
Yeah, for me, it's 7 to 11. Usually it's around so there's travel days where it doesn't work the same way. I mean, that's just the reality. Like really achieving a goal is being highly planned and highly flexible. It's this dance. There's a tension where you have to be both, because if you are so highly planned and not flexible, your goals become rigid and fragile. So you go, I have to do this thing this time today. And your kid's like, I don't care. I'm sick. Like I'm a sick kid who's about to wreck your schedule. And you're like, oh, so you have to hold both of those things in the same kind of tension. And that's what I do. So on most days from 7 to 11, I'm working on creative ideas. I'm working on writing. And I'm trying to do meetings in the afternoon because I know energy wise, the afternoon's better for me with meetings. I need the morning. I don't do, breakfast meetings much anymore because I say breakfast is too expensive. Like when somebody says, hey, I'd love to go to breakfast, like, nope. Like I'd love to walk. Like today, a friend of mine this afternoon. A friend of mine was like, hey, I'm thinking about making a job transition. I'd love to talk to you. And like, it's somebody I actually know. So I was like, yeah, cool. Let's go on a walk at 4:30. Cause I also want to be getting steps. I also want to be outside. I want to be, vitamin D, endorphins, all the stuff versus, oh yeah, let's use my writing time for like, no, let's put it in the afternoon where we're both available and we'll get so many other benefits from actually walking.
I love that. One of the things I want to transition to, actually the reason why I started really following all of your stuff is a book you wrote. It's actually behind you and right here, Soundtracks. So I've recommended this book to thousands of people. We've mentioned it on this podcast a few times. I think it is so, so valuable for every single business owner, coach, just human to listen to this, because we all struggle with overthinking. And I remember listening to like the first chapter of the book. I was like, I don't struggle with overthinking. And then you start saying all this stuff. I was like, okay, maybe I do.
That's funny.
So highly recommend it. If you are an Audible person, listen to it, because Jon cracks jokes in the middle of it and you'll just start laughing out loud, and it is fantastic. I want to talk about soundtracks and creating soundtracks. For someone who hasn't heard of this book, high level overview, why should they listen to it?
Yeah. So the highest level overview is your thoughts become your actions and your actions become your results. And so all too often business owners, gym owners, coaches over focus on the results they want, and they never change the underlying thoughts that are really driving everything, and they never get the results they want. And they go, why didn't I get the results this year that I want? Because your thoughts didn't change. And so soundtracks is just my phrase for a repetitive thought, a thought you're having again and again and again and again. And the core idea of the book is, how do you make your thoughts work for you, not against you? Like, what if you could get really deliberate about mindset and make overthinking and your thoughts a superpower, not a super problem? And that is a big switch, because most of us were never taught how to think. There's no class in the 9th grade that says, hey, here's how to think. Or there's no college class that says, here's how to choose your thoughts as you enter the marketplace. There's no class in any incubator for entrepreneurs that goes, hey, when you start a business, these 52 crazy situations are going to happen and your thoughts matter. So let's go ahead and pick those thoughts so that when they do happen, you're ready. So that's the core concept of the book is, okay, how do I take this, what again can be very fuzzy, very vague mindset? Everybody knows like I should have a good mindset, but what do you actually do? And so the book is, how do you on a practical, tactical way build a winning mindset and make it an asset, make it a tool, make it the slingshot for everything else you do.
That was really good. One of the things you talk about is retire, replace, repeat, right? So like figure out, and I think one of the most aha moments for me personally and with a lot of our clients is just recognizing this is an old soundtrack. This needs to go. And then figuring out, what do I want to believe instead? And if any person listening to this is like, okay, I'm a little bit intrigued. You actually did a bunch of research with 10,000 people with Michael Peasley, PhD. Is that his name?
Exactly. Mike Peasley. Yeah. He's brilliant.
Tell us a little bit, like, okay, that's high level, but like, why should people do this? Maybe some of the results people had when they started replacing those negative soundtracks with positive soundtracks.
Well, I mean, it changes your entire life because you don't notice how many thoughts you're having that probably aren't helpful. For my own life, like writing the book, I always write books that I need first. So I go, wow, I'm trying to get to a different level. I'm trying to grow my business. I'm trying to grow myself, whatever. What's in the way? What's a tool I need to add? And so I kept coming back to, okay, I've never really explored mindset. I wonder if it's getting in my way. I wonder what would happen if I was really deliberate about it. And so I started to research that and was so surprised how many of my own sentences in my head ended with "you idiot." The punctuation of the sentences I was telling myself were "you idiot." And I was like, that's surprising. I wouldn't, if you had asked me, do you talk negative to yourself? I would be like, no, what are you talking about? But then when I paid attention, that's the other thing is like, Some of it is about self-awareness. You can't change any part of your life if you don't have self-awareness. You can't get in the best shape of your life. You can't have good relationships because you don't have an accurate picture of reality. So like the executive who gets fired for having an abusive anger issue is like, what are you talking about? Like, and because there's no self-awareness. So once I started to explore thinking, I started to go, wait a second, here's how I'm talking. What do I want to do with that? So, I mean, the results we see once a week, somebody mails me their book. Like they'll go, I finished writing my book because I was overthinking this thing and I did it. They'll send me a picture of their storefront and go, I launched my business. They'll invite me to I get invitations to like MBA program graduations. And they go, hey, I actually did the thing. And you look back on it, you realize all of these thoughts are getting in the way. And a really specific example, I'll have executives who are being given bigger positions at work, but they're pulling back. And if you pull the thread, and I always say, like, ask the thought behind the thought behind the thought. When they were 15, when they were 18, somebody said, you're not a natural leader. You're not a real natural leader. And they believed that, and they've listened to that soundtrack for 20 years. So they're missing out on opportunities. So business owners specifically, there's people right now listening going, I'm not a CEO. Like they have a broken soundtrack that goes, I'm not a real CEO. You work with coaches and business owners, I promise you, that are telling you, well, I'm not a real business owner. I'm not a real entrepreneur. And that's a broken soundtrack that's preventing them from growing the business, scaling the business, enjoying the business. Some of them have broken soundtracks that say, growing a business has to be miserable. You have to work 900 hours a week. You often get divorced. It's miserable. Like they've got a broken soundtrack about that. And then you go, it doesn't have to be that way. Like you just believe it has to be that way. So your actions and your results are ending up that way, but it can actually be really fun. You can build in as much freedom as you want if you've got the right soundtracks. So that's what's been really fun when you change the way. And then here's the other thing. It changes your entire day because the person you spend the most time with is yourself. So if you're not talking positively to yourself, it's like hanging out with a jerk the entire day. So like if you go, what if that person could be a friend, like your best friend versus a jerk? If I said to you, a 12-hour road trip with a jerk, like one of your worst enemies, or a 12-hour road trip with one of your best friends, like which would be more enjoyable, Nicole? Like you would go, oh, the best friend. Exactly. What if you could make you your best friend? Can you imagine what you could accomplish? And then you go, oh, I hadn't thought about it that way. And that's when you start to see crazy life change.
From a practical standpoint, setting goals, like, hey,
Yeah.
you're more successful at reaching your goal when you have a different positive mindset. And from like a weight loss standpoint, so many people will do really good for 20 days or whatever the case may be and go right back to old habits because they haven't set themselves up for success. But then they're also probably saying like, oh, I've tried this before. It's not going to work. It's not going to work.
They say that. Yeah. So when you start something new, say you start CrossFit and you've never done CrossFit, you're what I call pocket jury, like that part of you that collects the bad things you've done is like a jury at a trial, brings them all up. Your brain has a negativity bias, so it's wired for that. The phrase I use sometimes is like, fear comes free, hope takes work. Like your negative thoughts will find you. You never have to look for them. Hope, on the other hand, you have to work for, but it'll come up and go, every other diet failed, every other exercise plan failed, this is going to fail again. And then you put that on repeat for like 1,000 times. So of course it's hard to believe it's going to work. Of course you hit snooze. Of course you skip the class. Of course you don't follow up with the coach. And what you need, one of the soundtracks we teach is today is brand new and tomorrow is too. So you go, today is brand new and tomorrow is too. Like, it's not that it's magic, but you start to replace that broken one with, because if you really figure out what it's saying you failed before, you can't ever try again. What? If a person said to you, hey, Nicole, or let's say Janet, you're 32, you've already failed too many times, you can never try again. At 32, I might live for 40 more years. I don't get to try something new. I'm sorry, Janet, you've already failed. Like, you would never listen to that person. You'd be like, get out of my way. But because the thoughts that we have are delivered in our own voice, we tend to believe them. And so what if instead of saying it's never worked before, it'll never work again, you said, today is brand new and tomorrow's too. Like, today is brand new and tomorrow's too. And then you turn that thought into action. It's not about just having a positive mindset. Like, words are useless without work. You put in the work, but often you won't get the work unless you first put in the words and start to believe them.
I love it. And you actually recommended, hey, stand in front of a mirror and say
Yep.
it to yourself out loud on a consistent basis, whether it be the first thing in the
Yeah.
morning or
Which
and
is the
at night.
goofiest thing, dude. It's the goofiest thing. Like, I didn't want to do it. I'm a negative. I grew up in Massachusetts. I'm a like New Englander with like a chip on his shoulder. I'm super pessimistic by nature. I've tried pessimism and I've tried optimism, and the results of optimism are way more fun than pessimism. So I work really, really hard to be positive. Like, it takes me a ton of work. It's not my nature. So if anybody listening to this is like, oh, geez, like, you got to talk out loud. Yeah, I agree. I think that is ridiculous. But I tried it, and I started to really, the switch for me, I interviewed all these people I really looked up to and respected that were really accomplished. And if you get them off camera, off mic, and be like, hey, what do you think about self-talk? Like, they'd all like, well, I got this pep talk I give myself in the afternoons, or like, hey, I got a couple words I focus on, or hey, and I was like, oh no, I'm going to have to try this. And then when I tried it, and the one I practiced with this list that Zig Ziglar came up with, and I was like, oh, this really is changing how I think. In the same way that it's kind of like, if I didn't eat all day, at the end of the day, I shouldn't go, it's weird, I'm hungry. Like, it's weird, I'm hungry. If I haven't worked on positivity all day and motivation, I shouldn't at the end of the day be like, Nicole, weirdest thing, I feel like I'm in a bad mood. Like, it's weird. I feel really down on myself. And if you said, well, what have you done? And I said, nothing, you would go, oh, I'm about to blow your mind. Do something. Like, one of our soundtracks in our family with our kids is, if they bring us a problem and they haven't done anything to fix it, we'll say, well, you've tried nothing and none of it worked. You tried nothing and none of it worked. So like, then we're like, so let's try, let's see what happens. And I say that one to myself too. Like, if I run into a roadblock and I want to give up, I'll go, well, what did you try? And if the answer is nothing, I'll go, of course, nothing never works. Like, nothing
Right.
is never and so that's why, for me, reading in the mirror, and the results of people that did, like, their overthinking went down, their negativity went down. Like, there were great results off of something that I admit is very silly.
I have to admit too, I thought it was super silly until I read the book. And after you started like listing all the statistics with like
Mhm.
increased satisfaction and people reaching their goals, I was like, all right, what's it gonna hurt? Like, it's
Yeah.
definitely not gonna hurt me. I might as well just try it. And then I was like, all right, I'm bought in. Let's do
Yeah.
it. Let's share the news. It's interesting. You brought up kids and you brought up other people, and I have two comments on that. Number
Mhm.
one, you and your daughters wrote a book called Your New Playlist. We have twin 12-year-olds as of tomorrow, and we're all listening to it together. And I think, like, man, how cool would it be for parents to all do that with their kids? Like, imagine if you were spoken life into and realized you could change your thoughts at that
Yeah.
young age. Like, how much more could you achieve, or how much more confident would you feel? And it goes into everything, like school and sports and just friendships and all of the things. Like, highly recommend.
Oh,
I think
thanks.
it's really cool that you guys did that. So yeah.
Yeah, well, so this is the first book I've ever written that, when it came out, parents said, hey, do you have a version for teenagers? And that's never happened before. And I started to see broken soundtracks so many different places with teenagers. And you think about how hard it is to be a teenager now, versus when I was growing up. And so my two daughters, who are in high school at the time, wrote the book, because if I wrote it, it would sound like an adult trying to be like, what's up, fellow youth? Like, I'm so savage, didn't mean to be lit. And so, yeah, I would love, like, one of my goals is I would love to see mindset taught in high school in the same way that financial education is now. 20 years ago, 30 years ago, our plan for teenagers with finances was like, hey, we're not going to tell you anything. Here's a credit card. Good luck.
Have fun.
And now, like, as freshmen, they take classes and they go, oh, here's how a loan works. Here's how I balance my budget. So imagine if in ninth grade, eighth grade, you could say, hey, how you think about yourself really matters, especially
Yeah.
as you kind of leave the high school environment. So we're going to give you some tools for that. I think it's a tool that, it's the kind of tool that I would have loved to have had access to as a teenager.
Absolutely. I was just with a youth group leader at our church over the weekend, and she just bought the book, and I was like, hey, you should do this as like a connect group or something with the kids or the
Oh,
teens
that's awesome.
in their youth group. So I think that she's gonna do that. So it might not get in the schools down here, but at least it's gonna get in the church. And
Yeah,
hopefully that'll
baby
impact some
steps. We'll
people.
have to work our way in. Well, we just had a principal buy 140 copies the other day. So we were like, all right, that's pretty fun.
That's awesome. One other thing you mentioned is a lot of people who you might not realize do positive affirmations and essentially soundtracks in their own words. I was listening to a devotional with Craig Rochelle, and he has
Mhm.
a 3-day devotional called Your Words Matter, or like words that matter, so words to
Mhm.
live by. And it basically is like a spiritual version of like, hey,
Totally.
what are you saying to yourself? Here's what God says about you,
Mhm.
and here's how you need to say stuff to yourself to be more fulfilled in life. So I think it's really cool that a lot of different spins are coming together
Oh
and
yeah, there's a
worlds
ton
are
of
aligning.
overlap. There's a ton of overlap. And Craig it was fun to spend some time with him at GLS. So yeah, I love that he's pushing in the same direction.
I think it's awesome. It's perfect parallels. I have a question, and I actually put this in our coaches group because I mentioned that I was doing this podcast, and one of the coaches said, "Hey, what's the difference between positive affirmations and blind optimism?" So,
Oh
like,
yeah.
where's the line there?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, you could also say, what's the difference between positive affirmations and toxic positivity? Like, because that's a big popular thing people talk about. So, I mean, I think there's a few kind of differences. One is the actions that follow it. So, blind positivity never turns into action. You just go, it's going to happen. I've said it out loud. Like, no, that's not, no, not at all. Like, not at all. I don't positive think my way to books. I start with a thought and then I sit down and I spend 600 hours writing. So I'm going to pull something off my wall right here. Hold on. This is a note I wrote myself on November 10th, 2019. So almost 3 years ago. And it says, I love writing this book. I wrote that down because writing a book is a hard thing for me. It just is. And so I needed to be reminded, no, I love this. Like, I love this process. Like, I need to remember, like, I love this. And so I wrote that down on my wall. I looked at that. I've looked at that thousands of times, but that's not enough. I had to open my laptop. I had to do the work. So blind optimism is often, you notice there's not actions that kind of justify or are related to the statement. So that's the first thing. The second thing is blind optimism often doesn't get counsel. So you go, I'm going to do this crazy goal, and you don't have a wise friend go, hey, have you thought about, have you been careful about, could we talk about, like, that's all, if a friend tells you like, hey, I've got some questions, and you say, well, you're a hater, that's blind optimism. That's toxic positivity. Like, I cut all the haters out of my life. Like, no, some people are just giving you feedback. Like, hey, I think you need to be smart about that. I think you need to be careful about that. That's another side of blind optimism. And then I'd say the third is that, a lot of my stuff I talk about, especially with goals, what are the metrics? What do the numbers say? There's data. Like, I like to say, data kills denial, which prevents disaster. So data kills denial, which prevents disaster. Blind optimism never has data. Blind optimism goes, we're going to sell 1 million, memberships. And you go, well, there's like 100,000 people that live in our town. Are they buying 10 memberships each? That's amazing. Like, that's blind optimism. You have people that come up to you, gym owners, that go, Nicole, I'm going to do this. And you go, if I spent 3 minutes looking at the numbers don't equal this. Where are they coming from? Like, I love optimism, and I want your plan to be optimistic and for you to go for it, all those words. But I don't want your plan to need 10 miracles to happen, where you go, our gym's going to blow up because we're hoping 200,000 people move there from California tomorrow. And you go, well, like 10,000 might, or 1,000 might, but they're not all going to join your gym. Like, so that's blind optimism, is that you don't get counsel, there's no action, and there's no metrics.
I love it. All really, really great points. Thanks for that.
Oh yeah.
As we wrap up, we're going into a new year. People are more motivated around a new year, new month, Monday, milestones. What is one piece of advice that you would give to people to help them be more successful this year at reaching the goals or whatever they're wanting to accomplish?
Well, that's a great question. When will this episode come out?
This is going to come out in January.
January. Okay. I would say set New Year's resolutions, not January resolutions. Most people, if they're honest, set January resolutions. So they're super hyped about January. They think by February, like, I need to have it figured out. Like, you can edit your goals in February. You can change them in March. You should learn from your year all year long. That's again, going back to that being rigid. So I'll retire things that aren't working or if something has changed. So I like to think about it this way. In January, you plan your year at like 60-40. So 60% is my planning. The 40%, 20% of it, I'll overestimate or underestimate how long something's going to take because I can't predict it perfectly. The other 20% is there's going to be new opportunities that show up that I didn't know about, that I just had no idea about. So like, I don't try to plan my whole year 100% in January because that's fantasy. That's 100% fantasy. And the first time you have something wreck it, you'll quit the whole thing. So I try to have this balance so that I'm recognizing, okay, like I have this calendar I use, finishcalendar.com. It's this huge wall calendar. And I'm looking at it and going, okay, I can see with clarity, like I'm 80-20 the week of. I might be 90-10 the day of. There's not going to be 50% surprises today. There's might be 10%. But I'm looking at my calendar and I'm going, okay, here's roughly what I want to do in October. Cool. I'm going to have some plans. I'm going to schedule some stuff. Great. But I can get really specific in January. So I would encourage people to look at the whole year, not just January. Like that's where most people focus all their goal effort on, and look at the whole year and give yourself that gift of, I get to tweak things in February. I mean, that's where like you should use the middle of the year as another bit of momentum. Like you should say, okay, like you should do a goal review. I believe you should review your goals every first day of every month. You only have 12. You got 12 gifts every year where you've got a fresh month at your disposal. And I say that on Instagram all the time. I'm at Jon Acuff, and I'll do a short reel because God knows Instagram is not showing anybody photos. Like 4 people see my photos. So I'll do a reel and I'll be like, hey, it's the first of the month, little Bone Thugs and Harmony shout out. And then I'll be like, you only have 12 of these. Let's go. So I encourage people to use the whole year, not just January.
I love that. We will definitely link your Instagram and the books and all the things in the show notes of this podcast episode. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing all of your knowledge with us.
This was fun.
Yeah, I really appreciate it.
I remember when I first met you and your husband, I was like, what do you guys do when you're not in the gym? Because you were both in such good shape that it was very clear. Like I knew you weren't going to be like, we own an accounting firm. Like you guys were in such good shape. I was like, you guys don't mess around. Let's go. It was so fun.
CrossFit.
Yep.
Awesome. Such a fun interview with Jon Acuff. I highly recommend that you download the book Soundtracks if you listen to books on Audible. It is a fantastic book that I promise you'll be able to take action with right away. And if you have kids and teens, go ahead and download your new playlist. We actually listened to this book with our twin 12-year-olds, and man, did we have such a good time listening to this book together as a family and talking about how that applies to their life every single day. I don't know any parent that wouldn't want to set their kids up for success with the right mindset. It is well worth the investment of time to sit down and listen to it as a family or read it as a family. And one of the cool things about Jon Acuff is we're connected in a few different ways, but one of the things that common ground that I really enjoy is that he loves CrossFit. Maybe not as much as I do, but he does love CrossFit. And there's so many things that align with mindset and CrossFit. You know, you can go into a workout and you could say, man, this is going to be really hard. This is really hard. Or you can go into that workout with a different mindset saying, I can conquer this. I've got this. I can do this. I can guarantee you that workout is going to be a lot easier no matter what it is for you if you go in with a positive mindset. Now, one of the interesting things that I've learned a lot about as we are prioritizing mental health inside of our gym and inside of our coaching program more is so many people have so many negative thoughts. 80,000 negative. We have 80,000 thoughts a day and 80% of them are negative. That is a crazy statistic. So why wouldn't you do things to not sit around in negative thoughts as much as you might be doing now? Your mindset matters. And by doing the things that he talks about in Soundtracks, you can really set yourself up so that 2023 is your best year ever. Make sure you go follow him. He gives out tons of social media tips on Instagram every single day. We will put the link in the show notes so that you can connect with him and definitely download Soundtracks. Now, I mentioned this at the beginning, but we are so excited to launch a free 5-day challenge. This challenge is going to be in a private Facebook group where thousands of other people are going to come together, and we're going to have different topics every single day to give you tips to help you make health a way of life. There's going to be a live Q&A at the end of every day. All you need to do to register for this free challenge is click the link in the show notes. You'll fill out this quick form and it'll prompt you to join our private Facebook group for this challenge. I hope to see you inside that Facebook group so that we can help you make health a way of life. At Healthy Steps Nutrition, my mission is to empower 1 million people to take control of their health. And if we can equip you with the tools so that you can kickstart your journey in 2023, I am here for it. I hope you enjoyed this podcast episode. Please don't forget to subscribe, leave us a review because it's really going to help this podcast reach more people. We'll see you back here next week.